I'm not even going to begin to explain how long this video took to make. To be honest with you, I'm convinced that even after double and triple checking that I forgot one or two perks that will inevitably get brought up in the comments. But in any case, welcome to the second installment of the Great Discussion series, where I pick a topic in Dead by Daylight and talk about everything that falls under that banner, including killers, perks, and questions like, do we need more or are they unhealthy for the game? I give general advice and opinions on everything, and it's all a fun time. With that being said, today we are covering the topic of info perks. Now, info perks take up what I would say is a considerable chunk of the perk lineup. It feels like most perks in the game fall into the info perk category, especially on the killer side. I'll obviously be covering the perks later in the video, but for now, I want you to know that there are nearly twice as many info perks for killers as there are for survivors. For the purposes of this video, I will define an info perk as follows: any perk that allows the player to receive information about the other player's whereabouts that they normally would not receive, even if the perk's intended purpose isn't the info itself. So for killers, if it provides additional info on where survivors are, or for the survivors it provides you additional info on where the killer or your fellow survivors are, it counts as an info perk. My plan here is to pretty much go bit by bit, explain each perk, what I do with it, and who it can be used on. And if I think it needs any changes, roll with that as well. I will tell you this video is going to be quite long, and if I can remember, I will attempt to leave chapter markers in the description, but I make no promises. First, I want to address a common counter argument people were putting forth on my windows of opportunity versus ultimate weapon video. Now, I'm going to cover both of these perks a little bit later in the video, but the point is that a lot of people were telling me that my viewpoint on perks like windows of opportunity and ultimate weapon, where the power scales with the user, was wrong because, and I'm directly quoting a comparison here, if I give a child a loaded gun, it's still a loaded gun. And that comparison is stupid. A lot of people brought up perks like Sprint Burst or Dead Hard, where just because the perks are powerful doesn't mean people necessarily knew how to use them, and you could remove their uses by the person not being experienced or understanding exactly how the perk works. Now, the biggest thing about this, and one of my biggest problems with this thought process, is that those perks provide an inherent value, whereas information perks' value comes from how the user uses the information, and the strength of the perk comes not from the value it provides, but from the type of information it provides. What I mean by that is something like Sprint Burst, old Dead Hard, Pain Resonance, old Eruption Call of Brine, stuff like that, all were perks that provided inherent value, MFT even before the PTB nerf. They all provide this inherent value, and they give you value by just existing. Yes, sprint bursting into a wall obviously is not using the perk to its fullest potential, and we still consider it to be a powerful perk. But just because you sprint burst into a wall doesn't mean you didn't get the inherent value of the speed boost, which at most might kind of extend a chase for maybe a second or two, but that second or two could be all you fucking need for a gender pop. But something like info perks, regardless of how high in the tier list they are, will always only provide you with information, which is not inherent value. The value of an information perk comes from how well you utilize the information. And again, the strength of an information perk comes from the type of information that it gives. So with that in mind, I wanted to go ahead and jump into these perks, but I want you guys to remember this, that when I'm talking about the strength of the perk, always remember that just because the perk is strong does not mean that it is overpowered. I feel personally that an info perk can never be overpowered, and they will never fall below C tier, but they will never go above A tier. Okay? All right, with that in mind, let's hop right in. The first info perk is A Nurse's Calling. A Nurse's Calling states that whenever a pair of survivors or more is healing within a 28-meter distance of you, you see their aura as long as the heal action is going on. This is personally one of the greatest beginner perks, in my opinion. You get it from the nurse, obviously, and it's just really, really strong. I think that whenever we're talking about Nurse's Calling, it's always best used with killers who can go through walls pretty easily. So Artist, Pyramid Head, Nurse, obviously. These are all like really good killers that are just able to utilize the power really well. Nurses is also really good on Wraith and Spirit to killers that are very, very silent and pretty deadly. You would think it'd be great on stealth killers, and I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not the best on killers like Myers and Ghosty and things like that. Scratch Mirror Myers, maybe. But I just think that honestly, it's best utilized on people that can go through walls, and it's best paired with Sloppy Butcher, the general killer perk that makes it to where your basic attacks apply hemorrhage and mangled, because it takes them longer to heal, and then you see them for that amount of time. So yeah, so another good killer to use Nurse's Calling on is actually Night, and Night and my brain is blanking. Charlotte, the twins. I would also pair this perk with undetectable perks if you're not using them on stealth killers, and it just helps you get the jump on a lot of survivors. It's really, really useful. Next up is Alien Instinct. Alien Instinct is the arguably the weakest of the perks from the Xenomorph. What it is whenever you hook a survivor, the furthest injured survivor from you becomes oblivious, and you see their aura for a certain amount of seconds. I would have to go back and read the perk, but this is really, really weak because it's the furthest injured survivor. So if there's no other injured survivors, eat shit. If the injured survivor is across the map, eat shit. It doesn't really matter. Now, in the cases where you might hook it and the injured survivor is, the next gen over, then cool. It's great. But for the most part, it just really doesn't work that well. And even on killers who can cross the distance really fast, it's just not the greatest. I really wouldn't use it. If you were going to use it, I would do it on killers that maybe force people to stay injured, like Legion and Plague. Or I would pair it once again with Sloppy Butcher, which keeps them injured, and just kind of use that, I guess. But for the most part, it's just really not that great, and I wouldn't use it. If I were to make a change to it, I would probably make it to where it is the closest injured survivor instead of the furthest, but some people may say that that's a little much. Awakened Awareness. Awakened Awareness is a Wesker perk, and what it says is that while you are carrying Survivor, any survivors within 20 meters of you have their auras revealed to you as long as you're carrying a Survivor. This is not the greatest perk in the world, but it's also not bad either. If I were making this entire thing into a tier list, I'd probably put it in like low B, high C. Because it is really useful information, especially for like, Sabo squads and things like that. But what I would personally do is pair it with other perks. So a really fun build is something like Starstruck and Agitation along with Awakened Awareness. So Agitation lets you move faster. Starstruck exposes anybody inside your terror radius while you're carrying a survivor, and then it lingers after a certain amount of time after they leave the terror radius. So you could put it, and then you could also put Iron Grasp in its place. So you Iron Grasp so that it takes 22 seconds to wiggle out. Agitation, so you move 15% faster. Starstruck, so they're all exposed. And then Awakened Awareness, so you know where they are. I personally use this in one of my Deathslinger builds, which is the new Furtive Chase, which whenever you hook a survivor, or whenever you hook the Obsession, you gain haste. You gain 5% haste and undetectable for 18 seconds. So I personally like putting this with Furtive Chase and then Starstruck and Awakened Awareness so that I know where they are. And then as soon as I hook the Obsession, I become fast and undetectable so I could chase them down and take advantage of it. But overall, Awakened Awareness, it's an average perk, but it's pretty decent. Barbecue and Chili. This is actually a really, really good info perk, and I think it's really underrated. And I say it's underrated because when I first started out, I thought this perk was awful because whenever you hook a survivor, any survivors outside of a 40-meter radius have their auras revealed to you. And this perk is, the 40-meter radius is insane. Personally, I would change it down to a 30-meter radius, but it's still a really good perk because it tells you what's going on the other side of the map. So maybe you're chasing somebody on a side of the map and you hear a gen being worked on while you're chasing them and you down them and you hook them. You know that gen's being worked on, but outside of the immediate area, you might know if a survivor is inside a basement, crouching in a corner, playing with their playing with their balls, whatever the fuck, right? Or you'll know if they're working on other generators, so you know what generator to go check on after you chase somebody off of the previous generator. This perk is also really good on characters who can get cross map really fast. Demogorgon, Freddy, Nurse, Blight, Dredge, things like that. So it's a really, really good info perk to have on any character that can get cross map really fast. It does unfortunately become a dead perk on places like Mid Bitch or Mid Bitch, I guess. Mid Bitch is the smallest map, so be very careful with that. Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur is actually one of the best beginner perks in the game. Every time a generator is completed, you see the auras of any survivors within, I think, 15 meters of the generator, maybe, for a certain amount of seconds. And then when every generator is completed, you see the auras of every single player on the map within for 10 seconds. So this is a really good perk to help you during the game, but it also has a lot of good in-game value. And it is something that I recommend using when you don't have a lot of killers. So if you've got like maybe just the free 5, that's Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, Nurse, and Huntress, then I greatly recommend Bitter Murmur as one of your like standard staple perks. It's just great to have. Next up is Blood Warden. Blood Warden is one of the perks on this list that people are going to be like, I don't really think that's an info perk, but it does fit into the criteria. Blood Warden states that whenever you hook a survivor on the end game, the exit gates, if they have already been opened, are blocked for 60 seconds. Now, the secondary effect of Blood Warden is it shows you the auras of any survivors inside the exit gates. Blood Warden is never used for its information, so if you're looking for good information perks, do not use Blood Warden. But Blood Warden as a perk itself is just generally a good perk. It's really good in in-game builds. Unfortunately, it's not always the best of the best, but it doesn't just like prevent people from leaving. It can also be a really good perk for like wasting people's time. So if you can get it to proc and the in-game timer has already gone down quite a bit, then sometimes you just get a free team wipe out of it. I would highly recommend using Blood Warden on people like Bubba, Billy, Iridescent Head Huntress, just people who can down survivors really fast, because then you can, even if you get a hook before the gates open, if they like open the gates before they come to get the unhook, which doesn't always happen, but if they do that, then you can get another down, get the trade, get them on a hook, and then like really fuck their day up. It's really, really cool. Next up, we have Call of Brine. Call of Brine is another perk that does not necessarily give information. It gives information, but that's not necessarily its intended purpose. Call of Brine is whenever you kick a generator, the generator regresses faster than normal, depending on the tier. But the other thing about Call of Brine is that whenever you kick a generator, it is yellow, and it stops being yellow. Yes. Okay. So sorry. Whenever you kick a gen, it regresses at 125% the normal rate. And then whenever it is highlighted in yellow, and you receive a loud noise notification every time a survivor hits a good skill check on the effective generator. Now it's only active for 60 seconds. And if I remember correctly, it cannot be active on more than one generator at a time, but don't quote me on that. Call of Brine has fallen from grace since its nerf, but I will still say that if you're looking for a good gen kick perk that also gives you information, use No Way Out. But you can also use Call of Brine to kind of guess when they're back on the generator. But if you're looking for something that tells you when they're back on the generator, there's another perk down below that I'm going to talk about in a little bit called Surveillance, and that's just the better perk. But honestly, the more I think about it, the more I just wouldn't use Call of Brine. It just really doesn't do what it used to. It's great if you want to stack gen regression. You know, you put Call of Brine and Overcharge together, and they do a lot. Overcharge is a doctor perk that whenever you kick a generator, it regresses faster and faster as time goes on, and then it attaches a permanent skill check to the generator. But generally speaking, if you were going to run one or the other, I would run Overcharge over Call of Brine. So yeah, I would honestly say that it's not that great. Darkness Revealed. Darkness Revealed is a dredge perk that is really only ever useful on people who search lockers very often. Every time you open a locker, all survivors within 8 meters of a locker for the next 15-ish seconds, 20 seconds, have their auras revealed. And then it goes on a brief cooldown of like 30 seconds. I think it's 30 seconds. I don't feel like looking it up. But Darkness Revealed is actually a pretty decent perk on Huntress. And only Huntress. it's only uses on Huntress, and then not every Huntress mains uses it because you are searching lockers so often. Obviously on locker dense maps like Mid-Bitch, Gideon's, Leary's, basically any indoor map, it's really, really good. But outside of that, like if you get thrown on Cockwind, it basically becomes a dead perk slot, and it's just not that great. Next up is Dead Man Switch. Dead Man Switch is another info perk that is actually, some people might consider it a utility. Whenever you hook a survivor, Dead Man Switch becomes active for 30 seconds. If any survivor stops repairing a generator while this perk is active, that gen is blocked for the remainder of the perk's activation time. The reason I consider this an info perk is because if they let go of a generator, it will light up white. It will tell you which generator got blocked, so you know which generator was being worked on recently, and it can let you know where you're supposed to go. The same can be said for our next perk, Deadlocked. Deadlocked is a pinhead perk. Whenever a generator is completed, the generator with the highest progress gets blocked for 30 seconds. 40 seconds? One of those. It's either 30 or 40 seconds. And the same thing happens. That generator will highlight white, so you know where the generator with the most progress is. Deadlocked used to be one of the greatest anti-gen rushing perks. In fact, it is the anti-gen rushing perk. It's meant to stop survivors from completing generators back to back. The problem with Deadlocked, and something that I get that really annoys me about it, is that now the way that survivors tend to play, it doesn't work as well as it used to. Nothing's changed about it, but it's just that the way survivors play now, you don't necessarily have 2 survivors on a gen that often. And so most of the time, even though you block a gen with the greatest progress, you still might find gens popping back to back because it is, because you blocked one generator, but there were 2 generators at, 91 and 95%. So, I had one night where I got gen rushed by a squad while I had Deadlocked on, and it was so, I kept saying it. I was like in the microphone. I was like, chat, I'm getting gen rushed while I'm running the anti-gen rush perk. So it's not as good as it used to be. As an info perk, it doesn't work too bad, but it's just, it's, I think in modern day Dead by Daylight, it's not as good as it should be, and I would probably, I wouldn't really use it that much. For Dead Man Switch, I recommend, sorry, I forgot to mention this. I recommend running Dead Man Switch with Pain Resonance, because when you proc the Pain Resonance, the perk with the, when you proc Pain Resonance, the gen with the highest progress, blows, and the people working on it scream, and so when they scream when it explodes, DMS procs, so you know both where the gen with the greatest progress is and the gen with the greatest progress gets blocked for a while. So next up is Deerstalker. Deerstalker is a perk that allows you to see the aura of dying survivors, or survivors who are within the dying state, for up to 28 meters, I believe, 24. I want to say it's 24 meters. And it's just generally one of those perks that, in my opinion, you should not run. Simultaneously, while I think it should be base kit, because base kit has severe nerf, I think Deerstalker should be base kit for like 8 meters or something like that. That's just me though. I've already made a video about why I think that, but it's still a bad perk because you're very often not going to use it. It's only really good on people like the Twins and Oni, and even then you don't really need it on the Twins because Victor gives Killer Instinct on the down survivor. So it's really only a good perk on a slugging Oni build. If you run any other slug build, sure, use it, but I just don't think it's necessary. It's mostly a dead perk slot. Discordance, Ots Darva's favorite information perk. Discordance is whenever two survivors are working on a generator, that generator lights up yellow. Now, I'm actually curious because I never use Discordance, really. What its tiers, its different tiers do. I just realized that. I don't know. Let's see. Within a range of 64, 96, and 128 meters. That is funny. That is so funny. Okay, so actually there's more to this perk than I realized. So here's the thing. So within 128 meters, which is basically the entirety of any map, I don't think any map is smaller than 128 meters. Don't quote me on that. But when the generator is first highlighted in yellow, which means when it first gets two or more survivors on it, it triggers a loud noise notification, and then after the generator is no longer within range or is being repaired by just one survivor, the highlighted aura lingers for 4 seconds. So this perk is really good on people like artists mostly. Artists is like the best use of this perk, especially when you have severed hands, which swarms other survivors that are next to people who have been swarmed. But Discordance is basically just one of those perks that lets you know what gens might be getting slammed, and so that you can go over there and pressure it. Now, I use Discordance in my stealth demo build, but honestly, I'm probably going to end up taking that out sooner or later. It's not necessarily bad, it's just got really niche usage. Next up is Eruption. Whenever you kick a gen, Eruption procs, and that gen is permanently infected. Whenever you put a survivor into the dying state, the gen will then explode for 10% of its current progress, and all the survivors on it will scream. When the survivors scream, their aura is revealed to you for 10 seconds, which actually isn't that bad. Now, it's no longer near the effect of old Eruption, which was stupid, and I'm not going to get into it now, but it is still a pretty decent perk for you to understand which survivors are working on generators and where those survivors are. But it is one of those perks where if you're not on a killer like Bubba or Billy or Eerie Head Huntress or whatever who can consistently down survivors very quickly after kicking a gen, it's not going to do you that well. I do think that it might not be too bad on somebody like Wraith, because Wraith you can kick the gen while invisible, and then you could go down a survivor, and then you can turn back invisible and go pressure if you wanted to, but that kind of thing. Gearhead. Gearhead is whenever a survivor loses a health state, so either healthy to injured or injured to dying, Gearhead activates for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, one of those. And whenever a survivor hits a good skill check while repairing a generator, their aura will be revealed to you for 5 to 6 seconds. This isn't the greatest perk in the world. I think it is a decent perk for killers who injure really fast. It helps the hit and run play style. So Wraith, Hag, Legion, stuff like that. Even Plague. If you vomit and then let the infection injure them, then it will trigger. So it's a pretty decent info perk. I would say it's probably in the higher C tier if I was doing a tier list for this. So yeah, it's not too bad. Face the Darkness. Now we can talk about Face the Darkness instead of talking about it when I was doing Darkness Revealed. Face the Darkness is a night perk that whenever you injure a survivor, a dull totem on the map lights up. Now, until the survivor is either put into the dying state or until they are healed, every 30 seconds outside of your terror radius, all the survivors scream. I think except the injured survivor. I can't tell you. I think so. But they scream and reveal their location. Now, this is, like I was saying earlier, this is really good on a pig build where you're trying to force head pops because the scream will interrupt and restart the pig searching. It doesn't have a high success rate, but that is where it's really good at. Outside of that, I don't really think Face the Darkness is all that great. If you're building a screaming build, grand. If you're not, who cares? Next up, Hex Retribution. Hex Retribution is a Deathslinger perk. Whenever a survivor cleanses a totem, then their auras are revealed to you for 10 seconds, I believe, and they are also oblivious. Reread that, make sure. Yes. Survivors cleansing or blessing any totems suffer from Oblivious for 35, 40, or 45 seconds. And then after cleansing or blessing a hex totem, the auras of survivors are revealed to you for 15 seconds. Now, this works for every Hex Totem. So while a survivor is cleansing, they're oblivious for a long time. After they finish the cleanse, on any Hex Totem in the perk, their auras are revealed to you for 15 seconds. And I just read on the wiki, and I don't know how accurate this is. It says all effects of Hex perk persist until its Hex Totem. Oh, okay, never mind. I was misreading that. So yeah. So it's really good. So like if you bring like Plaything with Retribution and they cleanse their Plaything, they will stay oblivious and you will see where they're at for 15 seconds. It's a really good information perk. Unfortunately, it's a Hex perk. So but it is best combined with Hex not Undying. Haunted Grounds. I'm so dumb. It is best combined with Hex Haunted Grounds, which whenever a Haunted Grounds Hex is cleansed, there's 2 of them that spawn. Whenever one of them is cleansed, all the survivors are exposed for 45 seconds. So Retribution pairs very well with that. Next up is Hex Undying. Undying is the info portion of it. We'll get to that in a second. But Hex Undying is whenever another Hex Totem is cleansed, its effect jumps to the Undying Totem. Now, as far as a Hex Totem goes, it's not that great because it is already lit, and they can cleanse your Undying before they cleanse another Hex. But we're not here to talk about that. We'll do a Hex video down the road, which will be way shorter than this one. But anyway, the big thing about Hex Undying is that whenever a survivor is next to a dull totem, or next to any totem, I believe, it might just be a dull totem, their auras are revealed. So you can actually get a little bit of aura reading out of it. Is it great? No. Is it bad? No. It's an average perk, and it's almost a staple in Hex builds. Hoarders is a twins perk. It comes whenever a survivor unlocks a chest or picks up an item within a 128 meter radius, their locations are revealed to you. This perk is shit. It's honestly, you could combine it with Franklin's, I guess, for some little information, but there's literally dozens of other perks that should go in this slot. Don't use Hoarders, please. Next up is I'm All Ears, which is Pyramid Head's favorite perk. Whenever a survivor performs a rushed action within a certain meter radius of, anytime they perform whenever a survivor performs a rushed action, that is sprinting out of a locker, sprinting over a window, sprinting over a pallet, they have their auras revealed for a certain amount of seconds. This is really good on survivors who are able to do really good anti-loop. So again, Pyramid Head, but you can also use it on people like Artist or Artist. It's actually not that useful on a lot of killers. Now it's got its uses here and there. It can stop you from losing survivors. I have a video, my very first Dead by Daylight video, where I was running it and a Meg tried to quick and quiet into a locker, and because of the I'm All Ears, I saw her aura as she entered the locker, so I knew where she was, so I didn't lose her. Next up is Infectious Fright. That's a plague perk. Whenever you put a survivor into the dying state, all survivors within your terror radius scream and reveal their locations. If you are tired of getting flashlight blinded when you try to go for a pickup, I suggest running Infectious. However, because background player is in the game, it's not going to necessarily do you that much good. But I will say that Infectious is probably just something that you want to combine with a Singularity perk, which I think is Forced Hesitation. And what Forced Hesitation does is it, whenever a survivor gets downed, all survivors within 16 meters are hindered by like 15% for like 6 seconds or something like that. So you combine that with Infectious, and then you can just be like, oh, you're right there and you're hindered, I'm going to come after you. And then it helps you just do a big slugfest. Next up is the info perks of info perks. If you are running any aura reading perks, this perk is almost always a staple. It synergizes with every aura reading perk, power, and add-on in the game, and that is Lethal Pursuer from Nemesis. This is one of my favorite perks. At the beginning of the game, all the auras of every survivors are revealed to you for 9 seconds, and then every single aura reading effect that happens during the trial for the killer is extended by 2 seconds. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but let me tell you something. That 2 seconds will often mean the difference between you seeing a survivor and where they're at and you not. And it just, it bolsters every aura reading perk in the game. It's one of my favorites. Just, that's its synergy. Use it with aura reading perks and aura reading add-ons, okay? Next up is Lightborn, which some of you might be surprised to know. I don't think that a lot of people know this part about Lightborn, but Lightborn is a perk that makes you immune to being blinded, and any survivor who tries to blind you and completes the blinding action will have their auras revealed for 8, 9, or 10 seconds, and that is really good. Basically what it means is that when you, like, let's say you get fucking blast mined, you can see where they're hiding right next to you and just go get them. It also helps because, like, sometimes you'll get blinded by as you're hooking a survivor. It protects you from flashlight saves. It protects you from flashbangs. It's honestly a really good perk. And if you think it needs to be nerfed, I think you're wrong. Extremely, actually. Next up is Merciless Storm. Merciless Storm is a perk that's really only good on Doctor, because he makes skill checks harder, and it's specifically skill check Doctor. But whenever a generator hits 90%, for the last 10% of that generator's time, the survivor is hit with countless skill checks. If they miss one of these skill checks, or if they get off the generator while the skill checks are happening, then the generator is blocked by the entity for 30 seconds. Now, just like the last two, DMS and Deadlock, this falls into the information category because that generator is surrounded in a white aura, and so it lets you know where somebody probably missed. Next up is the Perk Nemesis, not the killer. The Perk Nemesis comes from Oni. Whenever a survivor becomes the obsession, their aura is revealed to you for a certain amount of seconds, and they are oblivious. As a information perk, not that great. As a perk that combines with things like Furtive Chase, and perhaps even the new Chucky perk, the new Chucky perk, whenever you hook the obsession swaps to someone else, and they scream and reveal their location to you. This actually probably isn't that bad. So whenever you're changing obsessions with the new Chucky perk, yeah. This also pairs really well with Furtive Chase, because you use Furtive Chase, you hook them, you use the movement speed to get away, and then you're undetectable, and then whenever the person comes to unhook, they become the obsession, and then Nemesis procs, and then you go find them, and then you just get constant Furtive Chase value. But they also, Nemesis is other, I almost forgot about that. If you don't have perks that change the obsession with you, it's okay, because anytime somebody stuns you, they become the obsession. Which procs the earlier effect I was talking about. So Nemesis actually has a lot of synergies. Probably one of its more unknown synergies is actually Enduring Hubris. So you put Enduring Hubris, they stun you, you don't get stunned for as long, you see their aura, they're oblivious, and they're exposed. So that's pretty good. Next up is Nowhere to Hide. This is in like the top 5 of information perks for killer. Whenever you kick a gen, all survivors within a 12-meter radius of you for the next 10 seconds have their auras revealed. So it's not based on the generator, it is based on you. So if you hook somebody, if you damage a generator, this is so stupid, if you damage a generator and then quickly teleport to the other side of the map, you will see people's auras. It's insane. It's one of the best perks. Synergizes with gen kicking builds, synergizes with aura reading builds, synergizes by itself. It's amazing. It's definitely a perk I recommend if you're looking for aura perks to slide into your build. Scourge Hook Floods of Rage. Whenever a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge Hook, all other survivors have their auras revealed to you for 12 seconds. This is not as good as I thought it was in my Scourge Hook video. I still keep its placing as the 3rd best Scourge Hook, but it's not as good as I thought it was because honestly, the information relies on people unhooking from Scourge Hooks, and you need to actually hook people on Scourge Hooks. If you're like running Pain Res and you've got 2 other perks and you're just trying to figure out what you want your 4th perk to be, Floods isn't bad because then your Scourges continue to have use. But outside of that, it's just not that great, for sure. Also, and I didn't put it in the list, but I just remembered it existed. Hangman's Trick, Scourge Hook Hangman's Trick is a perk that whenever you are carrying a survivor and a survivor goes within like 10 meters of a Scourge Hook, you see their aura. And whenever a survivor starts to sabotage a hook, you get a loud noise notification. So Hangman's Trick is another information perk, but it's honestly just one of the worst perks in the game. I just don't use it. It's, if you want its effect, use Awakened Awareness from Wesker that I talked about earlier. So yeah. Next up is Shattered Hope, a perk that nobody uses because nobody uses boons. I don't even think people use Shattered Hope when people did use boons. It is entirely dependent on your opponent bringing boons, but when you snuff a boon, it, instead of just snuffing it out, it breaks the totem, and then all survivors within the totem's range have their auras revealed to you for 8 seconds. This is a terrible perk because it relies on your opponent to bring specific perks. So, do not use Shattered Hope. If I were to make a change to Shattered Hope, I would probably just like make it to where you can just break totems. And then like you yourself can go to a totem and break it. Oh, but then you might be able to use Pentimento. You know what? Fair. I have nothing else to say to that. Next up is Spies from the Shadows. Spies from the Shadows is a really, really odd information perk. So if you don't know, there's a game mechanic where crows spawn around the map. And when crows spawn around the map, anytime a killer or a survivor goes near those crows get disturbed. So spies, instead of you looking to see where a crow might fly off from, Spies notifies you. It shows you where a crow has been flown from. So that, that helps you out, I guess. I loved Spies when I first started the game. It was really, really good for helping me because I had like no map awareness and no game awareness. But outside of being a beginner, it's not really that great. It's fun to meme around with. But yeah. Next up is Surveillance. I was actually talking about this earlier. I got this one's effect confused with Call of Brine. Surveillance is a pig perk. Whenever you kick a generator, that generator turns yellow for a certain amount of seconds. That generator turns yellow, and whenever a survivor starts working on the generator, so whenever the generator stops regressing, it goes from yellow to white, I believe. So you know when a survivor is working on a generator, whenever they've touched a generator that you just recently kicked. This is not the greatest perk in the world, but you can combine this perk with something like Dragon's Grip, which will make survivors scream whenever they touch the generator and become exposed. And honestly, I don't even think you need it with Dragon's Grip. I was going to say like, oh, it can draw your attention and you know which generator just got touched when someone was screaming, but generally speaking, because Dragon's Grip is not a permanent trap like Eruption or Overcharge. It's a timed trap. So really, I don't think this perk has any synergies. Yeah, there's just better perks to put in the slot. I said earlier that Surveillance was better than Call of Brine, but I actually think Call of Brine might be better than Surveillance. Next up is Territorial Imperative. You're never going to use this perk. Don't lie to me. Whenever you are outside of a 32-meter range of the basement, any survivor that enters the basement has their auras revealed to you for an X amount of seconds, and then the perk goes on cooldown. There's no synergies with this perk. It does not matter. Fuck this perk. Don't worry about it. I did a video a long time ago called Fixing 5 Terrible Perks. And in it, I opted to fix Territorial Imperative. So if you want to know how I'll fix it, you can go watch that video. Next up is Thrilling Tremors. Whenever you pick up a survivor, all generators not being worked on are blocked for 16 seconds. This is a really good perk to let you know where to go after you get a hook. It's another beginner perk. Later on, as you unlock more killers and unlock more perks, you'll find better perks than this one. It comes from Ghostface. But if you get Ghostface early enough, then it's a great perk to have. It basically just tells you where to go next. Whatever generator isn't blocked, that's where you go. Next up is Thwack. Thwack, whenever you hook a survivor, this perk activates after you break a pallet or a breakable wall. All survivors within your terror radius scream, and you see their auras for X amount of time. Thwack is not that great, but I do enjoy it on palette shredding builds. So if I'm running like Enduring Spirit, Fury, Brutal Strength, I might run Thwack over Hubris, depending on my mood. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's not great either. It's another one of those really average perks. I greatly recommend it. Now we can talk about Ultimate Weapon. Ultimate Weapon, I did an entire video on Windows of Opportunity and Ultimate Weapon, and a lot of people got on my case about Ultimate Weapon, saying that their main problem with it is that it does too much for one perk. Now, you can go watch that video if you want to hear my counter arguments to other stuff. I want to just focus on the new arguments now. The new argument that people gave me is that it does too much, and it shouldn't blind. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't necessarily agree either. I think the perk is fine as it is. I think that there's a lot of counterplay to it. Yes, the blindness is annoying, but blindness is a very mediocre status effect. It's not that great. It's not bad necessarily. I have found uses for it, but there's almost never a time when blindness on a survivor matters, especially if it's only 30 seconds of blindness. So I just want you to remember that blindness is not that powerful of an effect. And so I think it's fine. I don't think it needs a nerf, but I don't necessarily disagree if they took away the blindness. I think that if you try to nerf the time of it, you know, the 30 seconds of activation, 30 seconds of cooldown, like people were trying to say you should, I think that's a bad play. But if you guys want to remove blindness from the ability, I'm not going to argue with you. I just don't think it needs it. Whispers is a perk that whenever you are within 32 meters of a survivor, the perk activates and you start hearing whispers. That's about it. It's not, I don't frankly care for it. I guess it's cool as a beginner perk, but 32 meters is a huge range. You're not necessarily going to know, you know, when you're within that, where they are in those 32 meters, but you'll know they're within 32 meters of you. Zenshin Tactics is the last of the killer's info perks, and then we got to go through the survivor's info perks, which thankfully there's not as many. Zenshin Tactics is the killer equivalent of Windows of Opportunity. It comes from the Oni. You see the auras of all breakable walls, pallets, and windows within a certain meter radius. The reason that Windows of Opportunity is strong and Zenshin Tactics is not is because Windows lets you know where your fellow survivors have been chased and where pallets have been broken. Zenshin Tactics, you should know when the pallets have been broken because you are the killer. You have been there to break them. So, yeah, don't use Zenshin Tactics. Let me grab some water real quick. On to survivors. Aftercare from Jeff. Whenever you heal a survivor or another survivor heals you, up to the last 1, 2, or 3 survivors that this action has happened to, you constantly see their aura. This actually isn't that bad. If you're running a healing build for the purposes of running a healing build, you could probably slot this in for one of your other perks. I don't typically run it myself, but it does give you pretty decent information on them. And I think you get the aura reading until they're injured. So yeah, it's not bad for knowing where your teammates are, but it's also not the greatest. Alert. Alert is actually kind of underrated. I think alert's not bad. Whenever the killer performs a break action, no matter where they are, alert triggers and you see their aura for 5 seconds, about 5 seconds. It's not bad. It doesn't have a cooldown, so if the killer's just going around breaking shit for whatever reason, then you'll constantly see them. And it can help a little bit in anti-loops. It's not the best perk. It's another one of those really average perks, but I do greatly recommend it. Blast Mine is one of my favorite troll perks in the entire world. After you have repaired a gen for 50% of its progress, you can press one of the ability buttons and you lay a little grenade that lasts 120 seconds. If the killer kicks the generator that you put the grenade on, they get blinded before they can finish the full break animation. They get blinded and stunned. This perk has no uses outside of haha funny I blinded the killer. If you got it on like a 99% gen and then you're like hiding right by the gen and the killer kicks it and they get blinded and stunned, you can finish it right under their feet, but you don't get to do that very often. The reason it's an info perk is because whenever you equip it, the generator it's equipped to lights up in yellow so other survivors can find it. So that's pretty neato. Bond. Bond is one of the greatest survivor perks. It's completely underrated, especially for solo queue. Any survivors within a 24-meter radius of you have their auras revealed to you. So you're able to keep track of your teammates. It's a little bit easier to know what's going on. If they're getting chased by you while you're working on a gen, it can help you understand when to get off that gen or where exactly they are. This also helps you find your injured teammates a little bit easier. It's a pretty decent one. It's honestly very underrated, and I think it should be used more. Circle of Healing got heavily nerfed a long time ago, but anytime you are healing another survivor within the boon's radius, which is 24 meters, like it is for all boons, you get 100% boost to the healing speed. So pretty good for altruistic teams, pretty bad for solo queue, but its information comes that whenever a survivor is within the boon, an injured survivor is within the boon's radius, you see their aura. So you know when somebody's sitting there waiting for you to come heal them. So not too bad. Chemical Trap is the newest perk from Ripley. Whenever you are finished completing 50% of a generator, the perk activates. Whenever you are next to a fallen pallet, you can put a trap on that pallet. Whenever the survivor or whenever the killer breaks that pallet, they are hindered for 4 seconds by quite a lot, actually. I think it's something like 40% or something. It's a really bad hindered effect, but it only lasts 4 seconds, so who cares? It's another meme perk, but its information comes from the fact that you can know which the pallet lights up yellow. Sorry, the pallet lights up yellow. That is trapped, so other survivors know where it's at. Counterforce is a Leon Kennedy perk. I'm sorry, this is the Jill perk. Counterforce is a Jill perk. Whenever you finish cleansing a totem, the furthest totem from you has its aura revealed to you for a very minute amount of seconds. I don't really like this perk. I think that when I first started using it, I was like, yes, it's great for like cleansing quest, but it's not the best. Honestly, if I were to make like a change to Counterforce, I would make it reveal the closest totem to you instead of the furthest, but that's just me. Dark Sense, whenever a generator is completed, Dark Sense activates permanently, and will only deactivate whenever its effect activates. So it's an activated perk, and then when the killer comes within 24 meters of you, you see the killer's aura for 10 seconds, and then Dark Sense deactivates. This is actually kind of underrated. When I was doing my achievement hunts and I had to do the generalist achievement where you can only equip 3 perks, I did Deja, or 3 general perks and escape 8 times. I did Dark Sense, Deja Vu, and Kindred. And Dark Sense came in handy quite a bit. So if you're looking for a new aura perk to try out on your survivor, try Dark Sense. It's not bad. Deja Vu is probably one of the most powerful info perks in the survivor category. Whenever you have the auras of the 3 gens that are closest to each other are revealed to you permanently, and whenever you are working on one of those gens, you get a 6% increase to generator repair speed. I have used this to break countless 3 gens. It is a staple in my Gen Rush build. My Gen Rush build is Deja Vu, Fast Track, Hyper Focus, and Stakeout. And it's just really, really strong. That 6% doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot more than you think it is. And especially in today's Dead by Daylight, where survivors just tend to M1 for the entire game and not do anything else, even while they're injured or whatever, this perk just helps you go even faster. It's ridiculous. Next up is Detective's Hunch. Whenever a generator is completed, all of the generators, hooks, totems, chests, and I think killer possessions are revealed to you for like within like a 24 meter radius. No, probably larger than that. I think it's like 38. I don't feel like looking it up right now, but it's a pretty big radius, and they're all revealed to you for a certain number of times. So it's really, really good. It's not like above B tier. I would even say it's probably like lower B tier into the C tier. but it helps. It helps you know which generator to go for next. Obviously, you would want Deja Vu over this, but it's not bad. I don't unrecommend it, but there are better perks you could put in, but it's also pretty decent. Empathy is strictly run in healing builds. It's a Claudette perk. You see the auras of all survivors within a certain meter radius. And the radius is so big that it basically is map wide. So you always see the auras of injured survivors. So it helps you find them to heal them. I don't really run it in my healing builds. Most of my healing builds have all 4 perk slots dedicated to healing the fastest I possibly can. But it's not bad to slot in there if you only have 3 perks that go to your healing build and you want a 4th. Empathy's not bad. Fogwise. I used to swear by Fogwise. Whenever you're working on a generator and you hit a great skill check, you see the killer's aura for like 12 seconds. If you can consistently hit great skill checks like I used to be able to do, then Fogwise is great. It's fucking phenomenal. But if you can't, then I definitely will not. Definitely will not recommend equipping it. Next up is Guardian, which I think got its name change with the Stranger Things coming back. It's now called Babysitter. It's a Steve perk, Steve Harrington. And whenever you unhook a survivor, the rescued survivor benefits from the following effects for 4, 6, or 8 seconds. Suppresses their scratch marks and pools of blood, and increases their haste status effect by 7%. And then it reveals the killer's aura to you for 8 seconds. I think, honestly, this might be kind of underrated. I think I might have underrated it. But yeah, it's really decent. I would definitely put it in your unhook builds. But don't try to pair it with Will Make It, because you'll never get the Will Make It value. Well, you'll get the Will Make It value, but not like greatly get it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's not bad. Next up is Inner Focus. Which I think is another, don't quote me on this. Inner Focus, TBD. Okay, yeah. Inner Focus is a Hattie perk. Whenever you, first off, you can see the scratch marks of other survivors, which is completely useless. I don't know why that's there. But when another survivor loses a health state within 32 meters of you, you see the killer's aura for 3, 4, or 5 seconds. This is fucking terrible. There's no reason for it to be there. So it just, every part of its effect is worthless. Don't use it. Kindred. Kindred is another one of those general perks that I think more people need to use. Whenever a survivor is on a hook, all the auras of all other survivors are revealed to you, and the killer's aura is revealed to you whenever the killer is within 16 meters of the hooked person. Whenever you are on the hook, all other survivors see the killer's aura when this killer is within 16 meters of the hook. So it helps. Basically, it just helps in your decision making. It helps you know when someone's going for the save. It helps you know when you should go for the save. It helps you know if the killer is being a little doo-doo head. But outside of that, you know, it's just a really generally good perk. It's a really good beginner perk. And it's just, if you find that you have trouble with your decision making in game, it's a good perk to run in general. Left Behind is a Bill perk. Whenever all the other survivors are dead, you see the aura of the hatch within 64 meters. Only use this if you have to do a hatch escape for a tome quest. Outside of that, I really wouldn't use it. I think personally, I need to redo my survivor perk tier list. I did that early in the morning when I was tired, and it just really wasn't. I need to redo it. The point is that I put Left Behind in like the low C, and I think I'll put it higher, but only because it is useful for in-game builds for survivors if you plan on being the last survivor alive. So if you combined it with Soul Survivor, Wake Up, and Adrenaline, fantastic. If you don't, then it's not that great. And I will stick by the fact that perks that require other perks to be good are not good. So Left Behind is not good, but I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was. So I'd probably move it up a couple spots in the C tier. Lucky Star is another perk that just came from Ripley, probably my favorite perk from Ripley. Whenever you get into a locker for the next 10 seconds, your pools of blood are hidden. Whenever you come out of the locker, the generator with the most amount of progress and the auras of all other survivors are revealed to you for, I think, like 10 seconds. So this is really good to just kind of find out where the rest of your team is and where you need to go. It's another one like Kindred that helps with your decision making. I highly recommend that beginners use it until they learn a little bit more of map knowledge and game sense. But other than that, I think it's great. Object of Obsession. Whenever the killer can see your aura, you see the killer's aura. And every 30 seconds, your aura is revealed to the killer. This is a perk that I just really do not, I think it's memey. I think it's really memey. And a lot of people read it and they think, oh, I'm going to put it with distortion. But no, listen to the perk again. It is whenever the killer can see your aura, you see the killer's aura. So if you run distortion, it'll never work. But it is pretty funny if you run this perk and then the killer is running like an aura reading build, and so you're constantly seeing where the killer is, but they're constantly seeing where you are. I don't really get the point of this perk outside of meme potential, I guess, and to be funny and to do the one obsession achievement. Or I think there's a tome right now, I read it earlier, where you have to see the killer's aura for like 80 seconds. I'll probably run Item of Obsession with that. Just so I can get that tome done when I get to it. But yeah, that's basically what that is. Next up is Plunderer. Plunderer is only used when you have chest unlocking tome quest, or if you're running a item build. I call it the scavenger build, not because of the perk scavenger, but because like I think it's a really fun play style to load into a match and then go find a chest. And then whatever that item is in that chest, that's the item you use for the match. So you could use plunderers in that kind of play style, and it's really fun. But yeah, that's what that is. Power Struggle. Power Struggle is only in the info perk category because it shows you the location of pallets when you're on the ground. But whenever you are walking under a pallet and you have at least 15% of your wiggle progress bar filled up, the next skill check you hit will drop the pallet on the killer's head, stunning them and allowing you to escape. Power Struggle is not bad as a perk within itself. It does, however, require a build to be really good, so it's not as good as it should be. But the information aspect of it is not amazing. Premonition. Fuck this perk, fuck this perk, fuck this perk, fuck this perk. Look, here's the deal, okay? I hate this perk because I had to equip it to try to complete a tome quest that is incompletable. But whenever the killer enters a 35-degree cone in your field of vision, the perk triggers. And you know that they're in a 35-degree cone. That's it. It's crap. F tier. F minus tier. Fuck it. Rookie Spirit is from Leon. You see the perk of generators. You see the aura of generators that are currently regressing. So it helps you know what generators have been kicked if you want to go over there and tap them or try to finish them or whatever. Not too bad. Helps with your decision making. So it pairs right along with Kindred and Lucky Star. You know, I could probably make an entire build. You know what? I might do that for a video. I might make a build that helps with your decision making. Keep an eye out for that. Next up is Spine Chill. Spine Chill used to be Spine Chill used to be a perk that was a staple for people like me who were deaf, and then the visual terror radius came to the game. But Spine Chill, whenever this killer enters your terror radius, it activates, letting you know that they are there. You enter the killer's terror radius, it activates, letting you know that they are there. And then when the killer can see you with a clear line of sight, you basically get a bonus to unhooking, repairing, healing, etc. Spine Chill is now dog shit. I'm just going to let you know that. It's now crap. It no longer counts for undetectable killers, and it no longer has the red bar showing you how close the killer is. So yeah, RIP Spine Chill. Troubleshooter is a Gabriel perk. Whenever you're in chase and you drop a pallet, you see the killer's aura and you see the gen with the most progress. It's not a bad chase perk. I think it's actually an underrated chase perk. Ots Darva tried to showcase it and he got kind of like rolled by bad luck. You know, killers tunneling, killers DCing, survivors DCing, stuff like that. But I honestly think Troubleshooter's a little bit underrated, and you should definitely use it if you get the chance. Next up, we have Visionary. Visionary is a Felix perk, and you can see the generators. I know that. There's a reason it's bad. Visionary, DVD. Yeah, the auras of generators are revealed to you within 32 meters, but each time a generator is completed, Visionary is deactivated for 20, 18, or 16 seconds. So yeah, it's not a terrible perk. I just don't know why it has to be deactivated. I think that having a perk that allows survivors to see generators, you know, within a certain meter of them is not terrible. But maybe there's a reasoning behind that one of you can point out to me that I haven't thought of. So yeah. Next up is Wake Up. That is a Quentin perk. Wake Up is an in-game perk. You open the gates 45% faster? 30% faster? One of those. But also, you can see the auras of the exit gates when they're powered. So it's really useful for in-game builds, and that's it. I wouldn't run it as like, oh, I might make it to the in-game. I would run it on a dedicated in-game build because then you just open the gates super, super fast. So yeah, keep that in mind. Next up is We're Gonna Live Forever. We're Gonna Live Forever is another in-game build. Whenever the exit gates are powered, you see the auras of all other survivors, and then you get like a bunch of bonuses, like unhooking them faster, and then they get like extended endurance and haste. It's a really, really good perk for in-game builds, but I really wouldn't do it with anything else. It's really good for that tome quest that makes you unhook somebody during the in-game collapse. If you find yourself constantly going for in-game saves, maybe you'll run it, but I think it's just better in in-game builds. And finally, we have Wiretap. Wiretap is an auto perk. It works exactly the same as Blast Mine, except it's just information to everybody else. So the generator will light up in yellow when you equip it, and then when the killer gets close to the generator, you can see their aura. And so can all the other survivors. But Wiretap deactivates whenever the killer kicks the generator. So it's just one of those things that like most people combined it with Blast Mine because it's funny. But generally speaking, it's not that great. I would not use it, to be honest with you. Oh, a perk I didn't put in here was Situational Awareness. Why did I not put... I didn't put it in the list. I was about to say, if you want that, then if you want to like tell your fellow survivors where a gen is, then run Situational Awareness. But I also think that it got its name changed with Stranger Things Returns, and yes, it's called Better Together now. Basically, whenever you're working on a generator, its aura is revealed in yellow to all survivors within a 32-meter radius, and then if the killer downs a survivor while you're repairing a generator, you see the auras of all other survivors for 8, 9, 10 seconds. So this is basically a better Wiretap, because it lets your friends know where you are. Like, yeah, it doesn't show you the killer's aura when they get close enough to the gen, but honestly, who cares? So yeah, so it's actually a good thing I remembered that, because I'm sure somebody would have brought it up in the comments. So that's all of the information perks. Generally speaking, I think that most information perks fall within the C tier to low B, but there are a handful of perks that are in the high B to even A tier, and they're definitely worth coming up with. And I didn't include Windows of Opportunity in the perk discussion. How did I do this? What is wrong with me? Do you guys, I remember when in the beginning I said I like triple and quadruple checked and made sure I got everyone, and I fucking managed to forget like 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, Windows of Opportunity. I made an entire video on it, and I mentioned this in the beginning, but I'm gonna say this again. Windows of Opportunity is one of the best survivor perks. It is an A tier perk. It shows you the locations of all breakable walls, windows, and pallets within a certain meter radius of you. It is not overpowered. It does not play the game for you. It does not turn weak loopers into strong loopers. It is only as good as the person using it in terms of the value that it gets. In terms of the information it gives you, it's super good, A tier. But its value is only strong if somebody knows how to use that information. Do not give me the tired old it applies to other perks. No, other perk strength is related to the value they give, while information perk strength is related to the kind of information it gives you and how limited that information is. And in terms of information perks, it's an A tier perk. In terms of value perk, it is only as good as the person using it. And that is just the crux of the matter. Now that that's out of the way, that being said, I think that information perks are not only healthy for the game, but probably one of the healthiest kind of perks. Because of what I keep saying, that information perks are really only as good as their user, I think that information perks are wonderful. I think that they're amazing. They're my favorite kind of perk. And to be completely honest with you, I think that we need more. I think we always need more information perks. We're getting a new one with Chucky, which I talked a little bit briefly about earlier, which is really, really cool. I think there's so many different things they can do with information perks. And I think that utility perks that also give information are really, really good. But other than that, you know, I think that's really all we have to talk about. Like I said, they're extremely healthy for the game. They're extremely cool. I kind of went over all of them. And, you know, their strengths and, you know, what I think if they're strong or if they're weak. So, you know, maybe you guys agree, maybe you disagree. This is a fucking hour and 7-minute video. I'm hoping that I will be able to edit out some of the parts that I need to edit out, but there's no promises. But as always, before I get out of here, let me get a special thank you to Peter RJ, Cinegrim, The Cannibal Main, Spirit Upgrades, and Nuclear Bomb for their additional support. If you guys want to find out how to become a channel member and get additional perks like seeing videos early or getting thank yous at the end of videos, please click that join button down below. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.